In this video, we will show you how to replace your front lower ball joint on this Toyota Sienna. This is part of your front steering and suspension located behind your front wheel. Let's get into it. Okay friend, let's get started on our job. We're going to have to safely raise and support the front of the vehicle so the wheel's off the ground. After that, to remove the wheel, remove all 5 of your 21mm lug nuts. Now that we've removed the wheel, the next thing we need to do is pay attention along the front of your front strut. We're going to dislodge the ABS wire and your brake flex hose from the lower aspect of the strut area. To do this, we'll be using a 12mm to remove the mounting bolt. As you remove all of your hardware, give it a close inspection. If it looks like anything's rotted and damaged, you want to go ahead and replace it. We can reach in this area, we can start dislodging this. Want to make sure we do not put a tug on this as we continue. Let's continue on in the center area here, removing our axle nut. To remove your axle nut, you'll be using a 12.30mm socket. With the axle nut off of there, we'll continue on with a hammer and punch directly in the center of the axle. Once you've broken the axle free, continue on to installing a lug nut to hold your rotor in place. Let's make our way down to the bottom of the suspension. We're going to separate the ball joint from the lower control arm. To do that, you'll find that you have one 17mm headed bolt and 2 17mm mounting nuts. Continue on, you want to pull down on the control arm in comparison to the ball joint. While pulling down on that, you can pull the ball joint and knuckle away from this area. Continuing on, we're going to carefully start pulling the knuckle away from the vehicle. While doing so, we're going to pull the axle out from the backside of the wheel bearing. Careful for any pinch points for this. We'll pull the axle up and out of our way, being extremely careful not to cause any damage. At this point, we can start removing the ball joint nut from along the top of the knuckle. Commonly, you're going to have a locking cotter pin. Go ahead and remove that, and then use your 17mm to remove the nut. After that, go ahead and start it back on just a couple threads. We'll set that aside for recycling. Now we can focus along the top area of this knuckle here. You can see that we have our 19mm nut that's held in place with a cotter pin. Go ahead and remove that cotter pin. Now let's get our 19mm on here. To finish removing the ball joint from this area, some people will use a pickle fork and carefully make their way in between this area, but you want to be careful because you could cause damage to your backing plate using something like that. Instead, I'm going to use my hammer, cause some light vibration along the knuckle itself. The vibration will help pull this down and out. Of course, since you're replacing the ball joint, you could also tap along the top here. Let's give this a light flex and pull it out of here. There it is, friend. The next thing we'll do is clean the mounting point on the knuckle. Just want to give that a thorough inspection. Now we can install our brand new lower ball joint. When installing this, we're going to be taking it and putting it in place into the steering knuckle. Just slide it right up and in there. Once you do have it in the knuckle, continue on with your mounting nut. Start it on by hand and snug it up. After you've snugged it, torque it to 91 foot-pounds. Once you have it torqued, the next thing we need to do is put in our locking cotter pin. The way we're going to do that is pay attention to the slots on that mounting nut in comparison to the hole that goes through the center of the stud of the ball joint. If it's not properly aligned, you need to go ahead and continue tightening the nut until the very next slot is. After that, install your brand new cotter pin. When you peen this over, you want to ensure it's far enough away from where your axle boot might be. You don't want to cause any damage. Let's carefully slide the axle into the backside of the wheel bearing here. You want to align the splines. You can start pressing this in. Now it's time to attach the lower ball joint to the lower control arm. For this, you're going to flex that control arm down. If you need to, you could use a pry bar for this. Continue on to aligning everything. You're going to have to push the axle into that wheel bearing a little bit. Along the bottom, we'll be continuing on with our hardware. As for the mounting bolt itself, you may have to carefully start squeezing the ball joint and control arm together. We want to make sure we do not cross thread this into the wrong position. Once they're started, snug them up, torque them to 68 foot-pounds. We'll make our way back looking at the ABS wire, the flex hose, and our front strut. We're going to re-secure everything here. The first thing you want to have is the ABS wire. We're going to take that and put it in position, aligning the mounting bolt hole. Once you have that in place, we'll continue on with the flex hose. That slides right underneath this area, holding the ABS wire in place as well, and we'll continue on with our 12mm headed bolt. Start it in, snug it up. Make sure it's completely secured. You don't want it coming loose and hitting up against something, potentially damaging it. Let's install our axle nut. When installing your axle nut, you never want to use an impact tool on this. By over-tightening the axle nut, you can cause damage to your bearing. Now it's time to torque the axle nut. What you may find is that it's going to want to spin on you. If that's the case, you could have a second person inside of the passenger compartment holding the brake pedal, which will in turn stop this from turning, or you can get this closer to the ground with a pry bar diagonally holding it in place. As we bring the bar across here, we'll make sure that we are not causing any damage to our lug studs. We'll torque this to 217 foot-pounds. Once you do have it torqued, the next thing you need to do is pay attention to the slot that you can see on the tip of the axle here. We're going to use a hammer and punch and drive the nut into that area, locking it in position so there's no way this can loosen up on you while you're driving down the road. Let's get this off of here. One last quick inspection in this area, and we'll continue on with installing our front wheel. Start on all 5 of your 21mm lug nuts, bottom them out. We'll get the wheels safely back down on the ground and torque each of these to 76 foot-pounds. With the wheels safely on the ground, we'll be torquing these in a crisscross manner. Torqued. Okay friend, we finished the installation of our lower ball joint. At this point, you want to go ahead and take your vehicle for a road test, listen for funny noises, and get yourself safely down to your local alignment shop. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.